Welcome to this instructional video. I wanted to take a little bit of time and talk about a few methods of fair division. We talked about some in class today. We'll just add to that with this video to finish things up. This first slide here shows the last diminisher method. I know you can read, so you can pause and read anytime you like if I go too quickly. The first person, they cut a slice that they view as a fair share. Now what happens is the next person, the second person, gets to examine that piece. If they think it's less than a fair share, they pass it on. They don't want to take less than a fair share. If they think it's more than a fair share, they'll claim it by trimming it back to what they view as a fair share. Now they can trim off just a little tiny piece, kind of an infinitesimally small piece to make claim, but to claim the piece, you have to trim it. So each person then, after the second player passes or trims, the third player gets an opportunity to look at it, pass or trim. The last person to trim it, after everybody's had a decision to pass or trim, gets the piece. We'll kind of keep doing this process until there's only until there's only two people that remain, and then we just use the divider chooser method to make it fair. Again, with these methods, sometimes they don't make a lot of sense until we try some pieces. So switching here to an example, we have an example. This foot's valued at $30 and it's to be shared among 5 people. So we need to figure out what a fair share is. A fair share would be the $30 sub, that's from here, divided by the 5 people. So taking 30 divided by 5, $6 is a fair share. So any $6 piece is a fair share. So person 1 makes the cut, person 2 gets to examine it. This is a $6 piece, so person 2 will claim it. Since it's worth $6, they'll just trim a couple crumbs off, a couple of crumbs, maybe a piece of lettuce, claim the sub. So person 2 has it now. As you're going through this table, one thing to understand is not everybody sees the same piece, but the value of the piece they're seeing, the value for person 3 is $8. That's the new trimmed piece, not the one person 2 cut. Not the one person 1 cut. Since person 2 claimed it, person 2 trimmed it, so now person 3 sees the freshly trimmed piece, and they think it has an $8 value. Maybe it has more pepperoni, whatever they like. It has an $8 value. Since that's more than a fair share, because 8's bigger than 6, person 3 would claim it. They would trim it to what they view as $6 is, and then person 4 gets the option. Now person 4 sees the piece that person 3 just trimmed, values it at $7. $7 again, bigger than a fair share. Since it's larger than a fair share, they'll claim the piece, trim it back to what they view as a $6 value, because that's a fair share, and then person 5 gets to take a look at it. In this case, person 5 still thinks it's worth $6.50. So person 5 will claim it, take off a piece of lettuce, cut a little crumb or two of bread off, but person 5 gets it. So the question here, which player gets his or her share at the end of round 1? Player 5 does. Player 5 trims it back a tiny bit. They're the last person. It had more than a fair share, so they claimed it. Now, what is the value of the share to the player receiving it? This is a little bit tricky here. The value for this person is $6.50. Normally, they'd get a fair share, but since it's the last player, they actually get more than a fair share because they can kind of take off a piece that's really worth nothing to them. So that's the last diminisher example. I'll move on here. I really just need to talk about the moving knife briefly. It'll be a little tough because you can't see all my hand motions as I explain. So with a moving knife, this involves, we're just doing an example here with a cake. The example in the text had kind of dividing up the state of Washington for sales. You would have one person be a referee, and you can have as many players as you like. the referee will just start moving the knife from left to right across the cake. The first person to yell stop, boom, they get the share to the left of the knife. The fairness comes in because everybody wants to make sure they get a fair share, so they're all going, oh, is this really? Okay, right there, it's a fair share, boom. Anyway, so you don't want to get too small of a piece by yelling stop too soon, or get greedy and let someone else get a piece bigger than yours. After a person yells stop, they get that piece to the left. Person brings out the knife, keeps going again, boom, 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 till there's only one player left, and they get that last piece. Since this involves cutting a cake, we don't really have an example of this, so we'll move on to another fair division method. Sealed bids. Sealed bids are kind of complicated when you look at this slide, but this is a really good one for dividing up estates or even things like chores. So, in the case of a sealed bid, you have some items, they're being shared, and everybody assigns a dollar value to how much they think the item is worth or how much they think it's worth to not deal with it, if you're dealing with something like chores. They do this in secret. The bids are then collected and they're kind of tallied up, and you get a fair share for each person. So, with our example earlier with the Subway sandwich, a fair share was $6. When we're doing sealed bids, everybody's fair shares can be different. Now, just like normal bidding, each item goes to the highest bidder. This can be a little bit tricky when you're talking about paying for chores. It's still the largest value, which happens to be, the lowest amount you pay to have somebody do something a little unique. Now, after every item is allocated, a person might get a fair share, they might not get a fair share based on what they received from their bids. So if they've gotten more than a fair share, they'll pay the difference between what they view as a fair share and the value they have into a holding pile. If they got less than a fair share, then they'll get money out of the holding pile. So this requires there being cash on hand to do this. Now, usually after the divvied up, you have money left in the holding pile. Whatever's left in the holding pile, since everybody has a fair share, that chunk is just divided among how many people there are and distributed out to be taken care of. Again, this will probably make a little bit more sense as we do an example. So I have an example here for us. So here's a sealed bids example. We have 4 heirs, Abel, Ben, Chris, and Dave. They have to fairly divide an estate consisting of 2 items, a desk and a vanity. We're going to use sealed bids. The players' bids are in dollars. So to find the value, firstly, we need fair shares. So I'm going to find the fair shares. And to do that, since Abel thinks the desk is worth $320 and the vanity $220, we add those together and divide by 4. We're sharing among 4 people. So $135 is Abel's fair share. Now for Ben, we'll add $240 and $140, getting us $380. Again, we divide by 4, so Ben's fair share is $95. For Chris, we have $300 and $200, getting us a $500 total. Dividing by 4, Chris's fair share is $125. Now for Dave, we get $260 and $180. Add those together, and we get $440. Dividing by 4, Dave's fair share is $110. So we need to know everybody's fair share. Now we go through and we see who gets what. So if we look here at the desk, 320, 240, 300, 260, Abel wins the desk. Now the vanity, 220, 140, 200, 180. Abel actually wins the vanity. So in our initial allocation, Abel gets both items, the desk and the vanity, Now that has a value of $540, which is more than his fair share of $135. So we figure out what that difference is, $405, and he has to pay $405 into the holding pile. We'll just say he pays it. We got a pot over here. Here's our holding pile, $405 in it. Now Ben, he did not win any items, so Ben gets his fair share in money, $95. Chris did not win any items either, so Chris gets his fair share of $125. Dave, no items again, but he gets his fair share of $110. Now all these fair shares here, if here's our holding pile, we have to take those out. So we're taking, one person's paid, the others are all taking this money out. So we figure out how much is left in the holding pile at the end of the deal, and this is $75. So that's what's left in the holding pile after the initial allocation. So we take 75 divided by 4, and we get $18.75. Since there was excess in the pile, the holding pile, everybody gets $18.75. So now when I go to the final allocation, I'm going to give everybody back $18.75. So in the final allocation, we still have to see who gets what. So Abel still gets the desk and the vanity. And now, instead of paying $405, he gets to take $18.75 off of that and pay $386.25. Oops, excuse me here. So, $405 minus $18.75 is $386.25. So he pays $386.25. So with sealed bids, we need to have that money on hand. If Abel doesn't have that much money, we can't do this. Now Ben, he had $95, and we add to that for Ben $18.75. Tough time with the eraser there. So adding those up, that puts his total at $113.75. Chris, I forgot an S there, has $125 that he gets out of the pot, and he gets $18.75 added to that, and so that runs his total up to $143.75. Dave initially got $110, so we take that $110, add the $18.75, and he gets $128.75. So those are fives there. So this is an example of how sealed bids work. Again, I went through it kind of fast. If you need to pause, rewind, stop, do all that fun stuff. Now we'll move on to another example, example 2.